Hi there, my name is Shannon and I'm Willamette Week's Music and Visual Arts Editor. I'm here today with Dr. Katy Townsend, who is an Associate Professor of Small Animal Surgery at Oregon State University. She recently performed an operation on a not so small animal, Chobi, a lioness who was rescued from the Tiger King's animal farm, zoo, whatever you want to call it, in 2018. Uh, Katy, how are you doing today?
I'm doing really well. Yeah, thanks for having me.
So to start off, can you tell us how Chobe ended up here in Oregon?
Yeah, so after kind of the I guess the dissolution of Joe Exotic's place, a lot of the animals, who hadn't been treated well and things like that, have been moved to kind of different sanctuaries around. And at first she had a stop in kind of like a essentially kind of like a foster home at another sanctuary where she was kind of kept for a little while before kind of looking for her forever home, which she then kind of found at Wildcat Ridge Sanctuary. So that's how she ended up in Oregon.
And the surgery was this month, but had you interacted with Chobe before that?
No, never with Chobe. We work together with Wildcat Ridge Sanctuary on anything that is kind of big or needs imaging or anything like that, but I never interacted with Chobe before.
Right. So did you? I'm curious if you watched Tiger King when it came out, and if you knew about Chobe and what was your yeah.
I mean, who hasn't seen Tiger King? I think it kind of hit at a perfect time during quarantine. And so, it was just such, gosh, just incredible viewing, incredibly sad, from an animal ethics side of things. And so, and so with that, definitely watched Tiger King kind of in a, being fascinated by the whole subject, but wasn't, aware or didn't like see her on that or anything, from that.
Right. So yeah, speaking about the darker side of things, can you talk about Chobe's condition that led to surgery?
So yeah, so her condition, so essentially she had an infected uterus. And so this isn't, necessarily, it happens to big cats in captivity. It also happens to dogs, regular dogs and regular house cats as well. So it's essentially just whenever there's an overproduction of hormones. So, and your own dog can get this if they're not spayed. Your own cat can get this if it's not spayed. So essentially, it's just kind of having more hormone, in their body, which then kind of changes some of the uterus. It makes it kind of a little bit more susceptible to infection, and then infection can kind of come in. So she had this infected uterus, and it is a life-threatening condition. And so essentially what we need to do is we need to go out and remove the uterus, because it's literally just like a big abscess, inside the uterus. It's pretty gross.
Yeah. How long did the surgery take?
The actual surgery itself was pretty quick, probably between about 30 to 45 minutes, something like that. The biggest part of this whole endeavor is getting Chobe, asleep and under anesthesia safely. And so, we're really lucky at Oregon State because we have such a wonderful anesthesia team, led by Dr. Ron Mansaga. And so, he's kind of the real hero here in the fact that he's able to safely anesthetize Chobe, and safe for her as well as safe for everyone else. So the people involved too. So getting her under anesthesia, she's a wild animal. So doing that and then getting her through to the CAT scan and then surgery itself. So she arrived around probably, the whole endeavor was a couple of hours, but the surgery itself was probably between like 30 to 45 minutes.
Right. So you're a professor of small animal surgery. How do you end up operating on a lion?
I know, right? And we kind of figured that Chobe's about 30 times the size of a regular cat. Now, I love cats. I'm obsessed with cats. And so, I love working on the big cats. It's such a pleasure to work on them. So essentially, they're very similar in anatomy from a small animal side. They're kind of just like a small cat, on a large scale. And so their anatomy is very similar to a few little tweaks that are different, but very similar to your regular house cat. And the surgery that we perform is ones that we would do all the time on a dog or a cat, and not something that like our large animal surgeons would do, because they typically concentrate on like horses and cows and things like that, so the larger species. So because my skills and knowledge is based on animals that had very similar anatomy, even though small, that's why it comes through our small animal surgery department, but definitely very big.
Um, how big is Chobi?
She's about 300 pounds.
Um, it sounds like you implied that you have operated on lions before. Have you, and what was that situation?
Yeah, so we've actually operated on Nora, who is a white Bengal tiger from the same sanctuary a couple of years ago, who had the exact same condition. So we were really lucky that, Wildcat Ridge Sanctuary is so wonderful about looking after their animals. So they were right on it. They knew straight away what was going on. They gave us a call and we told them to come in, for this, because like I said, this is life-threatening. So we've operated on her before a couple of years ago, and another actually operated on a liger last year, I think it was, from a different cat sanctuary that had kind of a similar condition. We did a spay, but it wasn't infected. It kind of just had too much fluid in the uterus.
There was kind of a colorful description of Chobi's shape. And can you explain more, other than the problem, the complications that led to the removal of her uterus? How else is she different from other lionesses?
Yeah, she's very short in stature, and so we think that there's probably definitely a high proportion of inbreeding that happened down in that facility of these cats, and so unsure of kind of her genetic background that caused this. It's likely she has some type of dwarfism or something like that, where her kind of essentially her long bones in her body are very short. So she's very kind of squat to the ground. She doesn't have that kind of typical, lioness appearance of her. She's definitely kind of short and stubby. And it's, I don't think we have any like genetic profiling on her or anything like that, apart from the fact that it's likely from from an inbreeding issue.
Hopefully, to end on a more positive note, how is she doing post surgery?
Oh, she's doing really well. So she still has to be. She lives with her sister, and she's desperately missing her sister, and her sister's desperately missing her. So they're kind of calling out to each other. But she does need to kind of keep rested, for a little bit longer, and then she'll be able to go and join her sister. But she's eating really well. She's doing really well, and so it's just about another week or so of kind of just keeping her quiet, so she doesn't wrestle with her sister, and then she can go back out and be reunited. But she's doing really well.